Hello, good evening, and welcome everybody to the third Comms Unplugged CIPR Health webinar. And we have a complete sellout, so we're expecting more of you to be joining in the coming minutes. So thank you to everybody for giving up your hour and a little bit this evening. We've got a fantastic evening lined up for you. I think we've got something a little bit special this evening, haven't we? So we've got our usual mix of everything from professional learning all the way through to mental health and well-being. So we've got everything from yoga to behaviour change theory and from workplace culture through to breathing skills and finding quiet time and place to just get away from the noise. And my word, it's been noisy, hasn't it, the past 4 months? So a little bit of housekeeping, why more of you are just still joining, or should I say webinar keeping? Is that such a thing? So for the masses at home, participants, you won't be visible. So if you're still sporting your lockdown haircut, don't worry, we can't see you. You won't be audible either. So for all your questions, the fantastic panelists we've got this evening, if you could put those into the chat, that would be marvellous, thank you. Also, just to say, we're recording tonight's webinar, so we'll be letting you have a copy of that afterwards. But before we get into it, big thank you to our friends at the CIPR Health and who have supported all three of these webinars. So we're really pleased that we've been able to work with the team there. And I'm delighted that one of my favourite comms leaders is with us this evening. She's the Vice Chair of CIPR Health. And she's world famous, you all know her. Jude Tipper, hello to Jude, how are you?
Good evening, that was a good intro. I'll come again. I love it. Thanks, Darren. I'm really pleased to represent CIPR Health tonight, and big thanks to everybody for joining us. Like Darren said, it's the third webinar, and I think across the series it's been an incredible array of speakers, great debate, really good interaction from attendees as well, and it's evaluated really highly so far, so no pressure to the guys tonight. Not that I need to say that, because it's an absolutely incredible lineup, as you all know, which is why you're here. The series, I think, has really importantly not just been about professional development, as Darren said, but also about well-being, and the COVID crisis, I think, has brought it into really sharp focus that we need to look after ourselves and look after our own well-being, and that's something that CIPR Health are really passionate about. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for coming tonight. Huge thank you to our incredible speakers, and the biggest thanks go to Darren, Sally and Georgia, who have learnt some new skills and thrown themselves into this new challenge and this new way with great humour, incredible hard work and kindness. So thanks, guys. And to everyone else, enjoy the evening.
Fantastic, thanks Jude. Thanks for that. And little quick word from my co-team members, Sally and Georgia. So Sally first, hello, how are you, and anything to add?
Hello, hi, I'm all good. Hello everybody, good evening, and thank you for joining us for our third in the series. So we've always been told by people taking part in these that you love the interactive bits and pieces. So one of the things we love doing is a poll. We do love a poll. So make sure that you take part in the polls as we launch those throughout. We've got 4 in total this evening. Some of them are only one question. I'm going to launch one now. Let's see how you're all doing. So do get involved in filling in the polls. Maybe just before we go into the yoga, we can see what the results of this are a little bit later. But yes, do get involved with that and enjoy yourselves, and obviously in the chat, which I think Georgia is going to tell us about now.
Yep, thank you, Sally. Evening, everyone. So the chat, keep it coming. There's loads of chat in the chat bar already, and both Darren and I will try and keep an eye on that. But for the actual questions, so any questions you've got for our panelists, for Dominic, John Paul, Bruce, please put them in the Q&A functionality. We're not using the raise hand tonight, we're using the Q&A. So anything you specifically want to ask, bung it in there, and we will do our best to get around to that. And fingers crossed, Dominic, John Paul and Bruce will stay on once they've finished their panel sessions and plough through all the questions that we haven't got to and answer them in that Q&A functionality. Okay.
Excellent, thanks Sally and Georgia. And Georgia, I think it's yoga time, isn't it?
Oh, it is, yes. So thank you. So as you know, anyone that's been to Comms Unplugged, we like to promise something a bit different. And what better way to do that than to start a webinar off with a little bit of yoga. But don't worry, as Darren has said already, we can't see you. If you've been in the field or if you've been on a previous webinar, you will recognise our resident yogi, Irina. She's a lovely, lovely lady. And so whether you are a regular practitioner of yoga or you're a little bit skeptical, it's only 5 minutes, so give it a go. Namaste.
Just before we launch that, I'm just going to give you the results of the poll. So I'm going to end the polling and just quickly share that, just see how much we need that yoga tonight. Let's have a look at the results. Okay, well, most people are feeling not bad. Oh, lots of you went outside today. That's really good. And Rose, who's going to be with us later on from Fresh Air Fridays, we're really pleased to hear that. Oh, we like our yummy food as well. That's good. And then finally, how are you feeling right now? Fairly on form. Okay, so that's not too bad. Give me just a moment. I will disappear from the screen and then I will launch the video.
Good evening, Unpluggers, and welcome to your little back, neck and shoulder stretch with me, Irina. So I won't mess around because we've only got a few minutes to do this. Let's just come to a nice, comfortable seated position. Come forward in your chair so your feet are nice and grounded on your carpet or your floorboards. Lift the chest. Roll the shoulders back and down. Imagine you've got little back pockets at the back there. Just tuck those shoulders in. Pop your finger on your chin. Don't move your finger, just move your chin. It's not a good look. And just do that a couple of times. Nice double chin creating there. So just get that neck nice and neutral. Just look down your top now. Inhale, give the shoulders a little hunch. Exhale, roll them back and down. And then just let the head float into a neutral position. And inhale, look up, reach up, arching back a little, lifting the chest, opening the armpits. And exhale, flutter your fingers down. Give those fingers a little flutter. Let's do that again. I'm going to inhale, arching back, opening up the elbows and the armpit. And then this time take the arms out to the side and give those fingers a little flutter and roll the shoulders. I'm going to take the right arm up on the inhale, reach. Turn the palm towards you, tucking the shoulder in. Left palm forward, exhale over. Keep that right buttock firm to the chair. Inhale up and follow your hand with your eyes as you bring that right arm down. And then inhale with the left, tucking the shoulder in, and exhale, reaching over, reaching, keeping that left buttock firm to the chair. Nice. Inhale up and follow the hand with your arms as you come down and roll. Let's take the right arm up again and take it towards the left ear. Inhaling. Exhale, let's bring your right ear to your right shoulder. Inhale, hunching left. And exhale, sinking down. Down, just let go. Use your out breath to relax a little deeper into this next stretch. And inhale slowly up. Again, really reach up with that hand. Try to turn it towards the back of the room so the little finger leads as you come down. And roll. Let's take the left arm up towards the right ear. Relaxing right shoulder. Inhale. Exhale, let's bring the left hip to the left shoulder. Inhale, hunching right. Exhale down, and again just inhaling, exhaling, use the out breath just to relax and stretch a little deeper. Come back to centre. Inhaling, turn the palm almost to the back of the room and let the little finger lead as we come down. And we're going to roll the shoulders. We're just going to work through the spine a little, make the legs possibly a tiny bit wider, tucking chin in, folding down. Come down as far as you can. If you can get your hands down, make sure it's the back of the hand, and then just shaking the head, yeah. Shaking the head now. Again, nice deep breath. And sinking, and letting go through your neck. Slowly reaching the arms out, giving the fingers a little wiggle, turning the palms up. Inhaling. Keep them up, little finger leads. Exhaling. Bear with me. We're just going to do the same thing, but we're just going to go over to the right side. And again, tucking the chin in and just folding down. On your inhale and letting go. And the exhale, let go. And breathe. We're going to come up on the inhale. And over to the left on the exhale, letting go. Deep breath. Just let the neck go, let the shoulders sink. And we're going to come up on the inhale, reach up with the hands. Exhale. One tiny little wrist stretch. Watch the shoulders and back. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. Namaste.
Well, that was fantastic. My fingers were fluttering. Anybody else out there got fluttery fingers? Really useful to do that. I think we're all working more from home, aren't we, obviously, and been sat in maybe not the best positions at home. So I've had a little bit of shoulder ache recently, so I need to get doing that yoga more regularly. So just a reminder, everybody that's participating tonight, don't forget to get your questions into the Q&A for our panelists. And next up, we have a rather marvellous session on the theory of behaviour change. We talk about this a lot, don't we? We hear about it a lot in communications. What is it and how can we apply it to our work? So we've got a fantastic panel. We have Dominic Ridley-Moy, who runs the Behaviour Change Network. He's also soon to be launching an online course that some of you will be very interested in, and I'm sure he can share the details of that. If you want to chat with him on Twitter, he's at Dominic Ridley Mo. And John Paul Dannon, who back in 2014 co-founded the Council Advertising Network. He's also now sales director of what's now known as Can Digital. Now John Paul is a clever chap. He's run with Can over 250 behaviour change campaigns. So there's an awful lot of experience there which we can learn from and tap into. So get your questions lined up for both Dominic and John Paul. And I think first up, we'll start with Dominic. So behaviour change theory. What can you tell us about behaviour change theory in the next 2.5 minutes?
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be difficult to run through all the theory there is, but I'm just going to put it a bit into context and talk a little bit about what we're seeing during coronavirus. So at the moment, hopefully you should see a poll on your screen. So it'd be really great to get a sense of if any of you are running any campaigns over the next 12 months focusing on behaviour change. So just while I'm starting to speak, if you can vote, that would be great. And then we're going to have another poll when I finish speaking about your priorities for behaviour change. So yeah, so I think I just really wanted to say a few words about behaviour change theory, what we're seeing at the moment. And I tend to work with organisations, particularly in the public sector. And for me, it's a really exciting time at the moment in the world of behaviour change. We're seeing there's a really great opportunity to embed better behaviours. So as you'll all know, over the last few weeks, months, we've seen people cycle more, eat more healthily, cook from scratch, recycle more, stop smoking, really rethink their spending habits. And also organisationally, we are seeing big companies adapt, and I suppose have to adapt and basically change the way they do things. And I think what we're seeing is that normally within big companies, people tend to like to fit in. There's a fear of failure. They don't take risks. So that's changing a lot, and has changed over the last few weeks. And also in the public sector, I work with a lot of comms teams, and I think the sheer volume of services means that we've constantly had to adapt in the way that we've delivered services. But there's also been some negative consequences as well. So people are struggling much more financially. People have lost their jobs. There's obviously been a huge effect on the economy. Mental health problems have increased. People aren't going to their GPs as much to I suppose tackle underlying health problems. So I think for us, there's an opportunity with all those positive behaviours to think about how we can use behavioural science to get people to keep doing all those positive things they've started doing, and also think about how they can. Oh, I've just seen the poll come through, so that's very interesting. So I'm pleased to see that lots of you are thinking about running behaviour change campaigns over the next 12 months. That's a good amount. So yeah, so I think just going back to the behavioural science, I think there's real opportunity to think about how can we continue shifting people. So all these good things they've started doing, how can we nudge them to keep with those positive behaviours, and also think about which behaviours will change as we come out of lockdown. So I think it's fair to say that some behaviours will disappear very quickly, especially ones that have been imposed by the government, as we're starting to see things like the, I suppose, the more hardwired tribal survival behaviours like eating, going out for meals, spending time with people. They'll come back much more quickly. So I think the trick for us is, as communicators, is to build much more positive associations with all those positive behaviours. So where we're getting people to cycle, eat more healthily, all those kinds of things, use their local shops, it's about rewarding them, building positive associations, and just showing that lots of other people are doing those things, those kind of social norm messages, so we can continually get people to see why they should carry on with those positive behaviours. So I've only had, I think, 2.5 minutes, so that's a very brief run through of some of the things, and if you've got any questions, do ask in the chat. And then if we could go to my second poll now, Sally, I just wanted to get a sense of, over the next 12 months, what are your priority areas for changing behaviour? So this would be quite interesting to see what you come back with. Have we got the results of that?
All the votes are coming in. They're not voting that quickly, Dominic.
Okay. All right, fine.
We've got 70 people on, so yeah, it's creeping up. I will share them in just a minute. At the moment, in the front of that is encouraging people to adhere to government guidelines, which I think you would probably expect in terms of hand washing, social distancing.
Yeah, that is expected. It'd be interesting to see where the priority areas are for other areas. And there was, yes, I think there was someone has put in culture change. I think we could only ask 10 questions, so these were the 10 that I thought would be the most likely, but I'll hand over to John Paul now, and we'll get those back shortly, I would imagine.
Hello. Yes, so I think our relationship started last year in the field over some warm cider. Not intentionally.
That's how we met, isn't it?
It was, yeah. And we once we realised we were both interested in behaviour change, and I realised Dominic was much better versed on the subject than I was, we started talking quite a bit and looking at how we can apply behaviour change theory in our own lives, actually, but also in our work for public sector comms people. And we started looking for a kind of recipe that we could apply to any sort of behaviour change objective. And some of the ingredients were things like multiple or many opportunities, particularly easy opportunities for people to take the first step. So something really simple that makes it easy for people to go from not engaging to engaging. And then using little things, commitment devices, sharing stuff on social media, saying that I'm going to sign up for this to take someone to the next step. Elements of social norming, so realizing that other people are doing this as well, and particularly your peers and people like you are doing it. And then another ingredient would be incorporating rewards and sharing. Real simple things, just emojis can work. Emojis have been proven to be incredibly effective, but giving people that little pat on the back that compounds the behavior. But a key ingredient or a key ingredient for sustainable behaviour change, and I saw a question popping up about how long it takes. You need to disrupt people's behaviours for between a month and 3 months normally, and they need to adopt a new behaviour for a similar amount of time. So from going from nowhere to sustained behaviour change, realistically you should expect about 6 months. I'm talking, like a big habit change. But those things can be accelerated massively, as we've seen recently, by social norming and so on. Dominic was talking earlier on about the greatest opportunity we've had in a very long time. You're always looking for when someone's automatic behaviours are disrupted. So that could be like moving house, going to hospital, changes in your family. There's never been a time that I can remember, probably not again, that so many people have been shifted out of their automatic behaviours and are considering consistently what behaviours are acceptable or good. So it's a perfect opportunity now, maybe the best ever, to change behaviours, how people use public sector services, adopting healthy behaviours and so on. Unfortunately, at exactly the same time, our public sector comms people, their workloads have increased from ludicrous to absolutely insane. And it's possible that we might miss this opportunity. I mean, we were talking about this, that just exactly the time when you want to be thinking about reprogramming populations, no one has any time. And so this is why Dominic and I have been talking about it, and we're trying to make ourselves as useful as possible. It's late and I haven't got very much time, so I'm not going to go into programmatic advertising technology, but basically it's like it was designed for building behaviour change campaigns. It's tech that didn't exist 10 years ago, and it means that comms people can build really effective campaigns that you can see working in real time. I think of it as building behaviour change engines that chunter away day and night, getting better and better at creating behaviour change. So really, just in summation, it's real, it's safe, it works wonderfully, and Dominic and I are going to make it as easy as possible for you to apply it in your campaigns. I would thoroughly recommend, whilst I'm here and I'm putting this in the chat, having a little look at commsfiles.co.uk. There's amazing examples on there. It's something that Darren's spearheaded the launch of. Absolutely brilliant resource for people wanting to get inspiration from other campaigns. And if you have any questions, ask us now, ask us later, ask us anytime. We're open and always happy to have a chat. Really any opportunity to talk about this interesting subject.
Thanks, Doc. Thanks, JP. I'm just going to quickly share the results of the poll before we get on to any questions. Yeah. Hopefully you can see that. So as you would expect, 40% are talking about, following the government guidelines and so on. And next one, healthier life choices, which is what you've just been talking about as well.
Okay, yeah, no, that's interesting. I wasn't sure which one out of, I suppose, the kind of transport and healthier life choices, which of those would be the top one. So that's interesting.
I've just seen two questions from Siobhan. Ofcom reporting 75% of the public have not altered their behaviour because of information or news in the media. I'm not sure exactly what that was based on, but we can see around us that many behaviours have changed. I don't know what proportion of it is, but it is far more significant than the number that you normally have when you're just relying on changes in people's circumstances. So it might not be the biggest behaviour change opportunity ever, but it is certainly bigger and present now. And
I was just going to add that certainly around the world, in terms of behaviour change, especially with compliance measures around what the governments have been asking people to do, there's been massive compliance all around the world. So certainly in terms of that, there has been a lot of behaviour change. I'm not sure if it's about a particular topic though or not.
And there's another question about how ethical is programmatic advertising. Well, it's certainly got a bad rep, but like with any tool, it can be used for good and for bad. When you use it for the public sector, you have to do it in a belt and braces safe way. How certain are you that you're really getting eyeballs? There's a load of things you can do to ensure that ads are shown in the viewport and so on. But the way you can be certain is that you see the outcome happening at the other end. You need to do it right. You need to do it ethically. You need to support the right channels and do things in the correct way. But even with those constraints, it still works wonderfully, and you can do really good things with it and measure them and see them happening.
And I think it's just about helping, as communicators, it's our job to help people use those tools ethically and correctly. And I think when you're targeting things much more, in some ways it's better, because I think with Facebook that could be quite broad brush, but with programmatic it's targeted much better. So it's seen by the people who actually need to see it. I've just seen there's a question there. Some of our campaigns may not be directly related to COVID-19. Would you recommend linking campaign messaging back to COVID to make it more relevant, or be brave and move away? I think really it comes back to basic behaviour change theory, and a lot of the time my work is really with working with people and thinking about what is the behaviour that you need to change. What is it that you want people to do differently, whether it's recycling more, stopping smoking, or whatever it is, and think about it. What is it that will get them to shift? So is it telling them, is it rewarding them, is it giving an incentive? So I think the most important thing is really to think, what is that behavioural barrier? What is the thing that is stopping people from doing that? And then help them shift that by doing that. So I think that's the most important thing, and the COVID messaging is perhaps a secondary part to that, but it's always coming back to basic comms principles. What other questions have we got?
Any advice for correct behaviour change in your office?
We've probably got time for one more, I think.
Okay.
So I guess let's have a look at Fran's question is quite interesting about civil unrest. What do you think the likelihood of civil unrest once furlough ends, winter hardship kicks in, and if a second wave is blamed on the public and their behaviours?
I think the tougher things get, the opportunity for unrest gets bigger, unfortunately, and that's what we're seeing, and unfortunately we may see more of it. If a second wave is blamed on the public, I mean, I think that's starting to see the weaseling out of responsibility on many fronts. If it's directly blamed on the public by the government, I think that will be problematic for them. I hope, however, that the flare-ups are minimal. Hopefully things can be kept bubbling underneath so much, but the moment a sense of unfairness or inequality is heightened, there will be problems.
Because I think that's the trick, and especially for us as communicators, that a lot of the time it's, I suppose, and hopefully the government will contain second outbreaks. I think it's where the if and when cases go up, and I think there's certainly a role to play for local lockdowns, that those are nipped in the bud quite quickly. And I think it will depend how tracing all works. So I think there's a huge number of factors, but for us it's about thinking about how we can help contain those outbreaks and what messages we can put out there to encourage people to keep to social distancing, all those kinds of things, and do what we can to keep things down. But I think it will depend on how things play out, and if there's an increase in rates and what the government does in response. So it's quite multifaceted and not a simple thing as ever is the case with these things. Have we got any other?
If I can do, I'm going to chuck one more in. Is that okay, Chair?
Yes, one.
Andrew Fielding has raised a question around almost like multiple behaviour change. So, for example, he's saying he works for the police and they may be targeting the same groups of people. People might be domestic abuse victims, but are also drug users. They need to reach them both and get all in two different types of behaviour. So and have you got any tips on overlapping that behaviour change work?
Yeah. I was going to say, I think the key with behaviour change, and this is the first principle for every behaviour change campaign or intervention, I would always start with, I suppose, one thing or the easiest to shift behaviour. So if you're trying to move several behaviours all at once, it will most likely not work. So whether it's cycling, domestic abuse, walking, it's always easier to focus on getting people to move one thing at a time, because people can't cope. It's like your New Year's resolution. If you focus on one thing, you're much more likely to achieve it than if it's multiple things. So focus on that one thing at a time. So break it up into different campaigns. So this month we're going to focus on X, that month we're going to focus on Y, and then it makes it much easier to get people to shift those behaviours.
Fantastic. That was such an interesting session. I feel like we could run that for about an hour, couldn't we? There's so much. I caught today, just latest research out today, that 1 million people have stopped smoking during COVID. I mean, that's incredible, isn't it? And there'll be all sorts of reasons and factors behind that. But yeah, I think this is an area we can return to. Definitely keep your questions coming in, because I think John Paul and Dominic are going to hang around, so I can carry on answering your questions. If you can keep them coming into the chat, that would be great. Get following both of these guys on Twitter, get signed up to their email alerts, and look out for Dominic's course as well. So thank you both for that. So in the spirit of keeping us on time, because otherwise Sally and Georgie will tell me off. Yes, they will. I'm going to move to our next session now. And we were so delighted, weren't we? We were kind of crowdsourcing. Who did we want to be our guest, our keynote speaker in the field in September this year? And we came up with a name, and we approached him, and he said yes. Of course, alas, we can't run it this year, but we should be back next year, bigger and better than ever before. But we're really pleased to get him onto the webinar tonight. So he's the #1 best-selling author, The Joy of Work, if you've not already read it. He's the ex-VP of Twitter UK. He's a consultant, he's a podcaster, he's a speaker, and he's a fellow Brummie. So really pleased and delighted to have in the house tonight Mr. Bruce Daisley. How are you, Bruce?
Evening, very well, thank you. Actually, I did agree to come last year to the conference, and I had a wedding. Weddings are just so selfish, right, aren't they? They're so selfish. They just intrude in people's lives. I'd abolish all of them, frankly.
That's mean.
Fantastic. Yeah. So as I say, Bruce, we've got you for kind of 15 minutes, I think, for your thoughts and insights on, workplace culture. And I guess it's never been more interesting than right now, has it, in your world? And the consultation work and going through huge change, as we've just heard, but massive shift from people working in call centres to suddenly working from home and in the back garden. What does that mean for your world, and what can we learn from you in the next kind of 15 minutes on this issue? Yeah,
well, I mean, I think you sort of raise a fair point. Interesting to kick off to think that, this is not just a transformation that has afflicted people who work in offices. This is not sort of first world problems. If you've had a FaceTime consultation or WhatsApp consultation with your doctor in the last 14 weeks, you'll know that other industries have sort of seen disruption and have seen these changes. And we're witnessing that it's been something that's now afflicted a massive part of the workforce. I think the really interesting thing is that broadly we're in a situation where, firstly, most organisations are recognising that they've adapted to more change than they ever believed possible. If you've sat in those sort of glacial paced management meetings where you struggle to get anything agreed and you're proceeding very slowly through an annual plan. And the fact that most of us have ripped up the way we worked and transplanted it to our kitchens is pretty remarkable. And the interesting thing for me is the stages that we've gone through in this. There was, initially a degree of denial that we were worrying that this might not be, that people might not be doing their job, they might not be productive. And we witnessed right at the start of the lockdown, a lot of people really sort of witnessing digital presenteeism. I remember one guy said to me that his boss had said to him, hey, if you go to the loo or if you go outside, will you just WhatsApp me to let me know where you are? And so we've witnessed the ways that we maybe used to check if people were at their desks. We've now checked if they're sitting at their workstations, or certainly bad managers. The line manager lottery has meant that some bad managers have done those things. But I think what's happened as we've sort of evolved and go through this is there's been a recognition, certainly a recognition that has been sort of slowly dawning on people that we're not going back to the way things were. And I know that right now we're in this sort of rose-tinted, exhausted hue where probably a lot of us would love to just have one afternoon of office chat, one afternoon where someone produces some cake, one moment where a bag of Pringles and a bottle of Prosecco turns up and suddenly the afternoon turns on its head. But for a lot of us, actually, what we're doing with that is we're rose tinting what the office was. So I'm really sort of taken with a couple of things. Firstly, sort of being a bit reductive about what the office actually did. Broadly, what people say about the office is it did two functions. No one really built an office to have an office. People had an office because it made their workforce productive. The two things were that you could meet people by appointment and you could meet people by accident. I think most of us have realized that meeting people by accident, Zoom calls, is pretty much tick, that one's done. And while they are marginally different, I think definitely the energy and exhaustion that we reach in Zoom calls feels different to the energy loss we have in meetings. We know that we can do online meetings. The second part is meeting people by accident. And I think that's where a lot of our attention is going to focus in the next few months. If you've sort of the joy of encountering someone near the coffee machine, when a coffee machine and an office were delightful things that we're now deeply embarrassed that we took for granted. But encountering someone at Lyft, bumping into someone in Pret-a-Manger and saying, are you around this afternoon for a chat? It feels like one of these happenstances now that we're deeply mourning. And I think there's a dawning realization on that. The interesting challenge, though, is that broadly, if you look into the research of what's happened, 2/3 of people are saying we don't want to go back to exactly the way it was before. About 75% of people are saying, I want to go into the office a bit. So we've got this mixed economy where people want a bit of both. And the challenge of this is actually sort of illustrated when we look at some of the firms that have gone remote only. So there's quite a lot of the sort of third wave of Silicon Valley firms that are completely remote only. One of the biggest ones is the company that makes WordPress. So Automatic makes WordPress, and they power about 1/3 of all the websites on the internet. So, massive business. And Automatic are one of the firms that are remote only. And the way they describe it is often how we sort of hear a lot of these stories. They say they started off with an office and then sort of a laissez-faire approach said, come in when you want. You can work from home when you want. You can come in when you want. And so the result of that was that people broadly would sort of elect maybe to make the journey in on a Tuesday, or they'd come in on a Wednesday and Thursday. But what we delete from that story is the fact that an office is a network. And the danger of offices is that if we unplug the network effect, they don't work in exactly the same way. If you could only phone people who are on Vodafone, immediately the phone network loses half of its benefit. And what we discover is when you allow people to work from home whenever they want, is that they come in on a Tuesday that they've elected to get up early. They've battled the 74-minute commute that is the average for Brits. They've made their way in. They get to the office. They want to go and chat to the big boss. They want to go and chat to the marketing team. They want to just go and chat to research, and none of them are there. And what we discover very quickly is if you give complete autonomy about how people work, then they pretty much very quickly, they discover that the network of effect of the office is gone. And the thing that made the office is defeated. And so why so many of these companies have gone completely remote only, it's because they've stumbled into this mistake. They've gone into this cul-de-sac of realizing that in fact people weren't there. And I think that's one of the interesting challenges for all of us right now, because we need to be a bit intentional. If we allow people to just make their own paths, what you discover very quickly is that no one will go into the office will be ghost town, and before we know it, we're working completely remotely. And I'm a big subscriber to the idea that even the introverts amongst us get a little bit of our energy from being around other people. There's so much evidence of this. If you look into people if they do activities alongside other people, they seem to get like some of their va-va-voom from doing something next to someone else. Two people working together, whether it's physical work, mental work, exercise, two people working together are always more productive than two people sitting alone. And so if we want to get some of that magic mojo back, some of those lift conversations, some of the chats at the coffee machine, what we're discovering is we need to be a bit more intentional about it. What does the office of the future looks like? Almost certainly your office in 2 years will be smaller than it is now. Why? Because we probably need less footprint. But I'm really inspired by going back to that company, Automatic. They talk about something that I think really gives us a pointer to work out how you can build these exciting cultures when you are working from the guest room for 2 days a week. And I say guest room, there's so much privilege in that. So many people I've met in the last 14 weeks on Zoom calls who are Zooming in from under the grill, Zooming in from next to the fridge, who are Zooming in from the sofa. So, you know, if you've got any degree of privacy, if you're Zooming in from anywhere apart from your bed, then shout out to you, because you're probably doing far better than you realize. But what do we need to do? Well, let's look at Automatic. Automatic say one thing that I think really indelibly stuck in my head. They say that the old relationship between work and workers was that you spent 12 weeks, you spent 11 months a year in the office and 1 month a year away from the office on holiday. They would say vacation. You say potato, I say potato. But that was the relationship. They say they've inverted it. They say you're going to spend 11 months a year away from the office, 1 month a year together with colleagues. So they don't have an office, but get together with colleagues. What does that mean? It means they say, put your babysitter on call, put your childminder on, fill Granny's sofa, fill Granny's freezer with lasagnas, because 1 week a quarter, we're going to ask you to come together with us. And they run these sort of really intense experiential moments where they try and build some sort of team cohesion together. Really interesting, because I think there's a recognition in there that actually being around colleagues is a really important part of our experience of work, but they're trying to do it in a different way. So look, over the next few months, probably sort of our bosses will say to us, they'll turn to us and say, look, you know, the team are increasingly asking, what's our answer on remote work? Now, the story right now is very resolutely, it's one answer. It's not the time for decisions, it's the time for experiments, because no one has the answer of what on earth this is going to look like. And the great thing is, I think a lot of us are sort of thinking, if we make a misstep here, if we say, okay, work from home till the 12th of November, you can work from home as long as you want, then we're going to discover pretty quickly that maybe that was a mistake. Some workers can't do it. How do you recruit people? How do you onboard new people when work is completely remote? However, if we say we're about to enter into a series of experiments, and one of those experiments is we're going to try this, what it gives all of us is it gives us the permission to test things out. Almost certainly that a lot of us were, when we were getting misty-eyed a couple of weeks ago, missing the office chatter, missing sort of celebrating someone's birthday. What were we missing? We're missing the fact that, you know, work enables us to be a different person, to put on different clothes, to adopt a different persona. And almost certainly sort of the human experience, I think we're laughing less over the last 14 weeks than we previously were. So no doubt being around people serves a purpose. However, if we're going to pretend in any sense that we've got the answers about what work's going to look like in the next few years. I think anyone's guessing. So it's a time not for answers, but for experiments. I think, big opportunity for anyone in your teams to start suggesting what those experiments might look like, and really just start trying to kick the tires. One thing I'm really inspired by is that there's anyone who doesn't know, there's a website called Glassdoor. And Glassdoor is sort of a location where you can go and post Amazon-style reviews for companies. And the interesting thing is that you'll know if you've worked, you're a practitioner in the trade, if you've worked between two different companies, broadly, there's more things that's similar between those companies than different. And I think actually, as we go forwards, that's going to change. We're going to find, I've found myself asking people at the start of my chats with them over the last few weeks, I found myself asking them, how many hours a week you're on Zoom calls? Now, it astonishes me how many times the answer is more than 30. But it's fascinating that I've met some organizations who say we really barely have meetings. We don't have a lot of meetings. We have a handful of hours a week, maybe 4 hours, 5 hours a week of meetings, but very different experience. I think that's going to be the fascinating thing. In 2 years, a lot of us are going to be sitting here now thinking, well, our culture was kind of defined by the circumstance we're in. And I think in a couple of years, we're going to find that, no, it's not the case. Some companies were far more intentional about creating moments that created a sense of cohesion, a sense of bonding. Other companies are going to be sort of just leaving their workers for Zoomageddon. There's going to be far more polarized, different positions. And I think that's the big opportunity facing all of us. All of us are in a situation right now where work is being redefined before our eyes in a way that will never happen again. This degree of transformation is almost impossible to happen again. And the big opportunity for any of us is to say, how can we get ahead of this? How can we do something now that really sort of creates something unique and special? What can we do that our competitors won't do? I think that's why anyone who wants to give themselves a project to think about if they're going to get away, maybe you're going to be stuck on a British motorway trying to drive to a staycation somewhere. You can stare out the window and gaze fondly and think about what is the solution for your work. How could you turn this situation into something that could be transformational for your organization? So really fascinating time. I put some of it into a newsletter. So I've just posted the newsletter in the chat box there. I'm not sure if it's turned into a link, but basically, as this is being constructed before our eyes every week, that there's quite often a couple more companies each week. Barclays have said that they're not inviting people back. I spoke to one London Council who said we've already put one of our buildings up for sale. We're going from 4 buildings to 3 buildings because we believe that we can actually do this with fewer. So this isn't just big fancy firms. This is starting to afflict everyone. And the really fascinating thing is that the ones who get ahead of it realize the world has changed and how they can be in the driving seat of this change. I think they're the ones who are really going to take the advantage and take the opportunity from this. It's probably me talked as much as I need to talk. Oh, here we go. I've got some questions. Here we go. What are you most excited about the future of your job? The survey before crashed my computer and needed to reboot. Might be more a reflection of my computer. What are you most excited about the future of your job? Seeing colleagues in person again, continuing to have some time from work, feeling like a team again, wearing something other than leisure wear, socializing after work. And there's another one at the bottom. How important is it to get back to the office as soon as possible?
Okay, so we'll just let people vote on that, Bruce, and I'll bring those results in a minute and hand over back to Darren and Georgia for the questions.
Thank you, Sally, and thank you, Bruce. Fascinating. I love that idea of experimenting. How do we do this differently? There aren't rules laid out for all of us. So I really like that concept. We've got 5 or 6 questions I see, Georgia, in the box. Shall I kick off first with the first one? We've got Karen Baker. Hi, Karen. Do you have any advice for moving away from the always-on culture? I'm seeing colleagues struggling with boundaries, working crazy hours across time zones. So advice for that organisation, Bruce?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is probably it's we'd spent some time 12 months ago talking about where work was, we'd have very quickly gone into the talk about burnout, the talk about sort of how people were burning both ends of the candle. And while it feels different right now, because it feels like we're not doing the commute, it feels like we're not getting home late. I think the some evidence from the US that people are working 3 hours a day longer. I'm really struck with people trying to strike boundaries. There's a fascinating French architect, sort of city designer called Cedric Price, and he talked about the idea that that cities were eggs, and we were going to stop doing. He talked about the stages of cities, where cities started as like these insular things, hard walls outside them, and that was like it was a hard boiled egg. Then cities went to these fried eggs, which is like this dense yolk with loads of stuff going on, and then like this spread out white suburban white. And he said that eventually cities end up like scrambled eggs, where like basically work districts and home districts are right next to each other. And in fact, the French mayor talks a lot about the 15-minute city, the idea that everything you need with it would be within 15 minutes. And I think, while we've eliminated the commute, a lot of us, we're sort of finding that we need to sort of take more advantage of the locations we're in. I'm just really struck that the people who seem to have this mastered are the ones that seek boundaries. I've always found that, in any job that we needed to try to avoid weekend emails. I think, turning our back on weekend emails is a good way to avoid burnout. But one of the other things, one of my favorite music journalists, he talks about, he found by a lifetime freelancing, he found that the best way for him to stop working all the time is he always puts his shoes on to work. And I thought that was quite charming. The idea that, you need to send a signal to your brain that you're not, even though you could open your laptop right now and sort of do a couple of emails on, a Saturday evening, a Thursday night, you can always do more work. But he was like, he wanted to signal to himself when he was on and when he was off.
That's a brilliant tip, isn't it? So you heard it here first. Get your work shoes on. Covered for the past 4 months. Georgia, more questions I know we've got coming in for Bruce.
More questions. So talking of experimenting and doing things differently, Jen from Dorset Council has asked, what can we do to make those endless video calls less tedious and more energetic and even fun?
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, I wonder if there's an error in the question. There's an error in our philosophy. The notion that we can spend endless hours staring at each other talking and that it be in any way productive might be the flaw in the question there. If you're spending more than sort of 15, 20 hours a week on video calls with each other, the question has to be, is there a better way to do it? I'm really struck with the organizations that seem to have mastered this and achieved a degree of success. And they often talk, there's a company called Basecamp, that's a software company. They talk about meetings are a last resort. And it's just an interesting, in some of my previous newsletters, I've posted some of their lessons. But the really interesting thing is that as a provocation, it forces you to think about, why are we electing that everything we're seeking to do is a meeting? Why is every action, every decision, every project we're working on, why is it all a video call? And I think, that's the challenge. The reason why, there's another question. What do you have tips for achieving team togetherness in video calls? I think the very fact that we're doing so many of them is achieving a level of burnout, of exhaustion. There's a strange thing about meetings. If you study meetings, I'm sort of very strongly of the belief that we should try to reduce the amount of meetings we do. But if you study meetings broadly, the research is fascinating. People say that their meetings, the meetings they're responsible for, are good meetings, and everyone else's meetings are bad meetings. And this, for me, reminds me of mothers appraising their babies. That we can't help but believe that things that somehow are our offspring are somehow better than everyone else's. And the question then becomes, are we just looking at something with too favourable an eye? Is there a better way to do this? Look, some of the things that I've been really intrigued with are the idea of silent meetings. If you are interested in that, an old colleague of mine wrote a post about that called the Silent Meeting Manifesto. And if you find that, you'll see it. But that's one of the ways to change change it. So what does it say? Well, it effectively says, you know, no one has time. If you're doing 30 hours of video calls a week, the idea that you've got time for a pre-read before you turn up at a meeting is like the greatest of hoax in history, because the idea that you've got any spare time to read something. So you turn up in silent meetings, and in silence you all read a document together, sort of a derivative of something that Jeff Bezos introduced at Amazon as something to try out. Here's what I'll say to you. Here's a user's guide. First time you try a silent meeting, it will be deeply uncomfortable because you're so used to the absence of silence. There's always some talking head burbling away. But if you try this out, what you can discover is that actually there are a different way to try and take information in. Another one that I'm really taken with is something called magic time, which is almost everyone schedules. A lot of the reasons why we have meetings is because we know if we're going to try and get Darren and Georgia and Sally together to next week, it's going to prove difficult. So we just lock it in 2 o'clock every Tuesday. Then what do? Well, we better fill something to do with that. And so we just create this content. And by some measures, Harvard Business Review estimated that it creates thousands of hours work just to have a meeting on the calendar. Magic time is the opposite. You just say, look, we never schedule anything between 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock on Tuesdays, but anytime any of us need to speak to each other, and that might be a quick phone call, it might be a video chat, it might be just a quick sort of message ping, then we're all available for that. And so it's I think the secret is that if we set about thinking the way that our teams are going to be more energized by meetings is us having fewer of them. And if you set about saying, okay, so we're going to try and do something which is transformational, we're going to try and half the amount of time we spend in the meetings. Right. Interesting objective. Half the amount of time. Firstly, most of us would say from our subjective experience, I know my life would be a lot better if I was spending less time sitting here. Or you turn some of your one-on-ones into phone calls. You say, listen, I just want to, I want to get up from this chair. Why don't we take our one-on-one as a phone call, and I'll walk around sort of the block 3 times. And it just trying to sort of vary the way we're doing things is probably the surest way to try and re-energize ourselves, I think.
I tell you what, definitely, Bruce, that walking around the block thing, that's very Comms Unplugged. Getting outside, whilst being productive we're like that one. We like that one. Oh, Sally's put the results up. Are you going for them, Sally?
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, we all want to see our colleagues again. That is the biggest thing that we're excited about.
But look at the paradox here. Look at the paradox here. Like, there's more people saying it's not important at all to go back to the office, the 1s and 2s there, than people saying it's very important. And there's the inner conflict. We're kind of all in this sort of weird yin-yang state where we kind of don't want the bad stuff of the office. We are happy that we've saved that commute. Our alarm clocks are sort of popping off an hour later every day, and we're sort of kind of delighted about all of that. But simultaneously, we'd just love one of those riotous Thursday afternoon banters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. Time-wise, we're a little bit over. Have we got time for one very, very, very quick question, Georgia? And
okay. I'm going to pick on Siobhan's question about culture, talking about, she's asking really, there's an argument that people say that culture, you can't build a team culture without an office. And do you agree with that? What's your view?
A few people have asked me that, whether you can build culture without an office. And, what I would suggest is that whether you can build passion without being together. And definitely it's worth checking out the history of the internet. And so the internet's sort of been able to sort of create passionate communities through a screen for 2 decades. The big difference is that you can create passionate communities who feel these really strong affinity with each other, which feels different. And it's why if you look at web communities, they often have meetups, and meetup culture became a big part of web communities, or, Comic-Con, or these big sort of extrovert events where all these introverts who loved each other through a screen get together and sort of have this outpouring of energy and emotion. So most definitely you can build culture through screens. The interesting thing about is that you can build cultures of affinity much more easily than cultures of disparate groups. What do I mean by that? I mean that it's and anything that people don't share in common with each other seems to be amplified through a screen. We tend to sort of err on the side of not having empathy. So, you know, if you've got younger workers and older workers, and, you know, to simplify identity politics, but older people tend to be more Brexity and younger people tend to be more Remainy, then those divisions that might have sort of expressed themselves a little bit when you're in work together, let me tell you, through a screen, they become massively amplified. So, you know, any of us, if we're trying to think about that, trying to think about those things, we need to be thinking, how do we bring people together? How do we shape our team's identities? So most definitely you can amplify cultures through a screen. But I think the one thing that we'll be really keen of when your event comes around next year, you'll all be saying, I've missed events. I've missed being with people, because it seems like those moments of getting together are probably going to become more and more important.
Fantastic. That was such a brilliant session.
Yeah, and I think that sense of community we have in, sorry, Dave, go on.
Yeah, if you are right, we've got 2 or 3 questions we didn't quite have time for. If you're able
I'll
to
answer them in the panel. I'll answer them in the chat box.
Fantastic. And just finally, before we let you go, people need to sign up to the weekly email of yours.
Yeah, or you can always link into me. I always sort of witness when you approach me here. I always reply to everything. I'm very willing to chat to you. So yeah, by all means, hit me up on LinkedIn if I haven't answered any of the questions.
Fantastic. You're a star. Thanks very much for tonight, Bruce, and speak to you again soon. So fantastic. Almost on time. I'm going to hand over to Sally for our final slot of the evening. Over to you, Sally.
Hi, hello everyone. Wow, that was a really lively session. So many questions and stuff, still loads to answer as well, which is fantastic. So I am really delighted to introduce our final wellbeing session and our final session of this final webinar in the series. And we've got the fantastic Rose Dixie from Fresh Air Fridays. Now, Fresh Air Fridays take people outside so they feel good on the inside, and they've been part of Comms Unplugged and been at every one of our events since we began in 2017. We get some very magical moments on our Fresh Air Fridays walks, and I'm really pleased that Rose is here to talk us through a new initiative that they've been doing, because obviously can't take people outside at the moment, so they're trying to work through different ways of getting their message across. So I'd like to hand over to Rose now for a little bit of relaxation and some breathing and some chill time at the end of our busy webinar. Thanks, Rose.
Perfect. Thanks, Sally. Thanks very much. I mean, it's been really great webinar. So much interaction and so many great ideas coming out. And now's your chance to relax with some exercises from Fresh Air Fridays breathing space. I'm not going to be talking for very long, very short background on it, and then we'll get down to actually you having a chance to practice these things. So we run breathing space sessions on various days and times through the week. They're free, available to anyone, 30 minutes long, and I think Sally's going to put the link in the chat. We created them at the start of lockdown because we wanted to give people a really easy access to simple tools to stay mentally and emotionally fit. So we'd love you to join us on a full-length breathing space if you get value for yourself from tonight. But enough chat, let's get to it. So first of all, what I'm going to invite you to do is to just, so much talking, I'm quite hyper. So just inviting you to tune in to what's going on for you at the moment. You answered the questions at the beginning, but perhaps take a moment now. I'm going to be silent in a second. Just tune in to what's happening in your body, tune in to what feelings that may be going on, and maybe the thoughts that are running through your head. So just tune in and in silence for half a minute. And now as you start to come back to me, what you may have found there is that there are certain feelings in your body. And so actually now we've started to tune in, we're going to move you about a bit. You may have been sat down probably for the last hour, and quite often during the day you may be, you know, quite sedentary. So what I'm inviting you to do now is to get up and move about a bit. Now you can dance, you can swing around, you can do whatever you like. Maybe patting yourself down, that gets the lymph system all working. And when we are sedentary throughout the day, breaking a moment into our work to take a bit of movement, actually breaking in and changing our physical can actually change what's going on mentally and emotionally too. So if you're feeling a little bit stuck, just getting up and shifting your space will really help. So I'll leave you to, I wish I could see you all. It would be really great to be able to see you all jiggling about. And then when you're finished, just coming back. And all these exercises are designed that you can do in your daily life to help keep you mentally and emotionally fit. And you know, the name does what it says on the tin, breathing space. We're going to go into a breathing exercise now and kind of tune back into what Irina said at the beginning, when you said if you're sat on your chair with your feet on the ground, your body in an upright position, closing your eyes if you feel comfortable to do so. We're going to do some breathing, and then I'm going to move straight into a short meditation. So be comfortable now for the next few minutes. And we're going to do an exercise called 7-11 breathing, which anyone who's come to Comms Unplugged with us there will know all about that. And it's where you breathe in for a count of 7 and out for a count of 11. And that longer out breath tells your body it's okay to relax. And if 7-11 seems too much for you, 3-5, 5-8 is absolutely fine. Breathing in for 3 and out for 5. So first of all, tune into your breath. Just notice it coming in and out of your body. Now allowing your breath to become deeper. And now in your own time, start your cycles of 7-11 breath, or 3 and 5, 5 and 8, whatever's right for you today. And I'll bring us back after a few cycles and we'll move straight into a meditation. It's really great if you can set yourself some time to do this breathing, like maybe in the morning, in the evening, or when you finish work, to segregate. And let your next out breath be the last of the structured breathing, and allow the natural rhythm of your breath to return. Letting your breath flow naturally in and out. And now let's start by drawing attention to the top of your head. Feel whatever is happening in this area. There may be tingling or heat, throbbing, soft vibrations. They may be strong, or you may not feel much at all. Now bring your attention to your forehead, your face, your jaw, and allow those muscles to relax. On your next out breath, Just let that sensation dissolve. Now bring your awareness to your neck and your throat. Notice a sensation on the surface of your skin or deeper within. Moving now to your shoulders. Notice any tension or strain. Breathe into your shoulders, and if they still feel tight, just invite them to relax. Extend your awareness down your arms towards your wrists and palms to the fingertips. And on the next out breath, allow them to soften. Now come to your chest, watching the rise and fall of each breath. And now moving your focus around to your back. And it might be an area where you hold stress. Notice any tension, any warmth, any discomfort. Observe it there, and then with each breath that you take, allow it to soften just a little bit more. Now move your focus to your abdomen, the rise and fall as your breath moves in and out. Moving down, taking in your pelvis and hip. Noticing where your body makes contact with the chair. Breathe into this area and relax into stillness. Now scan down your legs, your thighs, your knees, shins and calves, allowing your legs to soften and release tension. Now breathe deeply in through your nose, calmly, fully. Just be as you are, relaxed, having all the resources you need. Fully supported by the people you're connected with and everything that you have inside of you. Now just start to bring your focus back to perhaps sounds around you or the air on your skin. And in your own time, bring yourself back here to the group. And back to Sally or Georgia or Darren.
Thank you so much, Rose, for those important top tips and lessons. And also a big thank you to Fridays, because you've been a long-time supporter of Comms Unplugged. You was with us from the start. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do it without people like you. So thank you from all of us for your support, Rose.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I love it.
Thank you. What a great evening. How quickly did that go?
Very.
And by the way, Sally, we're going to finish on time. just so.
Good work.
More luck than judgment. So that was a good evening. Thank you so much to the millions at home. Thank you to Irina, to Dominic, to John Paul, to Bruce, to Rose, and to Jude, and to CIPR Health as well for backing these 3 webinars. That's the end of our 3 webinars, isn't it? We'll have to do it all again. It's too much fun, isn't it? We'll think up something new next. Don't you worry. We shall be back. Big thanks from me also to Sally and to Georgie, because a lot of work goes on behind the scenes to make this happen. I'm just the mouthpiece that talks on the evening. Sally and Georgie do all the hard work. So thank you to my teammates for making this happen. And really, any final words from you two before we end the evening?
No, I think that was a fantastic one to end our series with. Really enjoyed that, Rose, at the end. I feel very chilled and relaxed now. And yeah, really lovely to have such a great programme on for this evening.
Yeah, and I guess from me, I would just say, as Darren says, watch this space. We might not be in the field this year, but we will have loads and loads of stuff in the pipeline that we've got planned. A lot of it will be not very unplugged and online, but as soon as we can, we will be getting out and about and doing some unplugged stuff in person with as many of you as we can.
Brilliant. Thanks, Georgie. Thanks, Sally. Jude, would you like to say anything before we depart for the evening?
No, I think everybody's probably about ready for bed, aren't they? Or a nice little nightcap. Just to say thank you again for the partnership. It's been a real privilege for CIPR Health to team up with you guys, and we look forward to doing more work in the future with you.
We certainly will. No, thank you ever so much, Jude. We've really enjoyed working with you and CIPR Health. So thank you, everyone. And on that note, take care and don't be a stranger. See you all soon. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
See you in the field. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.